have the power to transform this world. We can end crime and violence if we all agree to do one thing: share. Let's share our wisdom, share our time, share our talent, share our finances, but most of all, let's share our love. This is the Female Solution. Join me, Naima Latif, every morning at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Standard Time as we bring you stimulating discussions about the issues affecting our lives. If you're listening online at www.blogtalkradio.com/the-female-solution, press the blue button that says follow and get our daily topics every morning directly to your email and your smartphone. Hi, I'm Naima Latif, executive producer of the Female Solution radio show. We invite you to call in 515-605-9325 and participate in this daily think tank as we examine the challenges we face and develop solutions that restore peace and harmony. We are global transformers, changing the world from the way it is to the way it should be. We are one. Wherever we live on this earth, we are one human family. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to extend a greeting to all the members of our family, whenever and wherever you may be listening around the world. To our family in China, ni hao. In India, namaste. In Japan, konnichiwa. In Korea, annyeonghaseyo. In Russia, здравствуйте. In Germany, guten Tag. In Poland, dzień dobry. In France, bonjour. In Spain, hola. In Italy, ciao. In Egypt, ahlan wa sahlan. In Ghana, akwaba. In Nigeria, peleo. In South Africa, sawubona. In Senegal, mangadek. In Kenya, jambo. In Israel, shalom. In Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia, assalamu alaikum. Greetings, and may peace be upon you all. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Yes.
Good evening.
Grand rising. Yes, well, I guess for you it'll be grand setting. We're joined by our Saturday host, Zhana, live from London, where it is evening. And we thank you so much.
Well, it's still light out. The sun's still shining, but the days are getting shorter and shorter. And in Britain, in the wintertime, the days are really, really short. So at the moment, still enjoying a little bit of sunshine. And how are things? Are you back in Chicago?
We're back in Chicago, and we're here with your two guests, my traveling companions, fresh back from South Korea, where they had a tremendous experience of a nonviolent environment. We're looking forward to sharing with you today.
I'm very keen to hear about this.
I can't hear her.
Greetings, everyone, and particularly welcome to my guests. This is Zhana, author of Success Strategies for Black People and Affirmations for Parents. And I host the annual Blogging Carnival for Nonviolence. Welcome to my Success Strategies show on the Female Solution Worldwide Radio and TV Network.
Yes.
I'm here on the first Saturday of every month to help you find solutions and strategies for any problems or challenges you may be experiencing. We're here to help you make 2023 your best year yet.
Ooh,
Happy October.
Yes.
October is Black History Month here in the UK, and it's also the annual Month of Nonviolence, which is held by Black women for positive change and is open to everyone. And that means this month is the annual Blogging Carnival for Nonviolence. So stay tuned for all the blogs I'll be publishing this month. The link for the Blogging Carnival for Nonviolence is below. If you have questions or comments from me or from my guests, please phone in on 515-605-9325. Then press 1, which will put you in my queue so that you can speak to me or my guests. You can also join us on Facebook at The Female Solution and on YouTube at The Female Solution. I'm very happy to be welcoming two amazing guests today who are doing some brilliant work. Before I introduce them, I want to talk just a little bit about two terrible incidents which have recently happened in South London, and I'm going to get both of my guests to comment on these. One incident happened in South London just down the road from where I live. This happened a few weeks ago when a young black woman went into a shop to return some hair she had bought but not used. The shop owner refused to give her a refund, so she started grabbing things, and the shop owner decided to strangle her. The police were called and the young woman was arrested. I'm not clear about whether the shop owner was arrested for strangling this young woman. She's still very much alive. So, he didn't kill her, but still, he put his hands on her. I need to stress that this is not the first incident of its kind. This is only the most recent one that I am aware of. And as I said, I'm going to be asking my guests about their responses to this incident and what recommendations they can make for how to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. The second incident I'm going to be asking my guests about is the murder of a 15-year-old girl. I'm sorry, so this is a trigger warning. This is extreme violence. The murder of a 15-year-old girl on the bus on her way to school by a 17-year-old boy. Again, this happened in South London and Croydon, which is not near me, but, it's South London, so it's not that far away from me. As I've said, October is the global month of nonviolence, so I want to talk about how we can prevent these horrendous incidents from occurring. So what are your thoughts? Please phone in on 515-605-9325. Then press 1 to join the queue to speak to me and my guests. My first amazing guest today is Dr. Lynne Mohammed, founder of the Stream Labs. Dr. Mohammed helps to provide young minds with an opportunity to discover and become engaged in the learning process as they have had fun interacting with equipment and materials. Dr. Mohammed has worked as an educator for more than 40 years. In the United States, she has taught students from 2 to over 60 years of age. She has taught in more than 10 universities and colleges. She's worked as a science teacher for the Chicago public school system for more than 20 years. She has done a lot of stuff in education and educating young people. My other amazing guest today is Pastor Charetta Hodge. Pastor Hodge is on the ministerial staff of Christhood International Ministries of St. Louis. He recently attended the HWPL Global Peace Summit in South Korea to report on the international peacekeeping and community service work of her organization, which also has partners in Johannesburg, South Africa. Now, from what I understand, all 3 of you, Dr. Mohammed, Pastor Hodge, and Naima Latif, my lovely executive producer, you've all been to the HWPL event in South Korea. Is that correct? Have you all traveled together?
Yes, we did. We had the joy of traveling together and experiencing an amazing transformation of behavior. And I'm going to let our guests describe their experience. One thing that I would say.
I'm going to start by asking my guests a bit about their work. So I'd like to Dr. Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed, are you on the line?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, definitely. Welcome to my show.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for all the work that you do with
that's so kind. That's so kind.
Yes.
Thank you. And Dr. Mohammed, tell us, what are the Stream Labs?
The Stream Lab is a educational program, hands-on educational program that teaches teaches children how to incorporate what they're learning into real-world solutions.
Oh, really?
Yes. So the idea of to minimize things such as the negative violence that you brought up today, that's a part of what we do. So you're learning how to read, you're learning how to write, you're learning how to solve some math problems, you're learning how to investigate things through science. What are you going to do with all of that? And how does that help to give answers to some of the real issues that are out there? This is not just about
right. I find that really exciting. So what exactly, can you give us an example of what you actually did in your labs, the stream labs?
So I'm going to use the situation, one of the situations that you brought up about the store situation with the customer who was being strangled. So I wouldn't bring that to my younger children because it's very violent. But for my middle school children, for my high school children, I would bring it up, and I would ask them, first of all, have they had any encounters that are similar? Do they know real stories that are similar? Because I always try to make it fit into their scope. But the next piece of it, regardless if it's happening in their space or across the waters, it doesn't matter. It's humanity that's being affected.
Yes.
And so their job is to come up with a way to minimize that type of negative behavior and or minimize the source of where it might have stemmed from, so that it's not something that happens again, that escalates to that point. Someone has to put their hands on someone and put them in harm's way. So that, one of the things we would do, we actually had a discussion about, I made it very, very light for the children, but I actually discussed with them the struggles that are going on between North and South Korea right now.
Okay.
And what happened with the Korean War, because I told them that I may be making this trip. This is the summer session that I had, that I may be making the trip that we did make. And so I started the discussion with them about what happens if someone has their hand on a button that could potentially destroy an area, by a war, by a bomb, being shot from one place to another. They were like, well, why would they be so mean? And why would they do this? So they talk about this. What is the source of some of this meanness? And then as they were going through their interactions in our camp, we had an 8-week-long camp. Some of them got angry with each other. And I was like, okay, do you have a red button you're about to push? And I was able to bring it to them to say, wait a minute, that anger leads to more anger, which is to something even more devastating. So nipping it in the bud with them was my goal. And I had a 7-year-old, you can't push that red button. You're going to have to calm down. He's telling his peers this. So getting them to start to realize that these things start young, start in our homes or in our communities, and they escalate into world issues. So what you experienced there in London is not much different than what we experience in some of our stores.
I completely agree. We are dealing with the same issues on both sides of the Atlantic, and other issues, other countries as well. On mainland Europe, there are many places where we're dealing with these situations. So this is a shop in Peckham, which is in South London. It's not far from where I live, and it used to be a heavily black area, particularly people from Africa, and particularly people from Nigeria. But a lot of black people live there, a lot of people shop there every week, and we have what I call hair supermarkets, which are these enormous shops that sell everything you can possibly imagine for your hair care and everything that you've never even thought of, let alone imagined, for your hair care. And none of them are owned by black people. So they're selling us our hair products every day. They're making money in our area every day. And, we're not really benefiting from that because they're not even employing any of our people in these shops. They're not even employing any of our young people. So there's ongoing tensions within the community. And, so this situation arose, and as I said, it's not the first one, and I have seen an incident myself, at least one, in my local area. Very upsetting.
One of the things that we try to help children understand is the respect for each other. So whether I am from this background or whether I am from this economic status or that economic status, I'm a human being and you're a human being. You have your strength.
Yes,
I have mine.
yes, absolutely.
And so
we need to treat each other like we're all human beings. We need to treat each other with respect, but that doesn't always happen, unfortunately.
That's part of what we're doing, and that's part of it. So as you're coming up with your products, your answers, your things that you're inventing and blah, 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 let's think about that respect. Is this going to do something that's going to bring harm to someone else? If you're doing something to take away someone's freedom, someone's autonomy, then that's not a good tool for you to use or to bake or whatever. So making them be aware of what the uniquenesses are of other people, and then in turn having them use that awareness to help, not to harm, to help, not to bring difficulties to someone else. So that's part of how we know it from the Streamlab standpoint.
So, I mean, because conflicts are always going to arise between human beings. It's about how we address them, isn't it?
That is very true. But being open-minded to the point that you recognize that, and to put certain things like humanity forward. And the curriculum that we're using is one of the things that we picked up through the group that we're working with, HWPL. They developed this actual peace education curriculum, which gives specific topics to focus in on that helps them connect more to humanity, and even beyond just human beings, connect to creation and connect to the Creator, and be aware that we have a responsibility, but we also are obligated to do things not just for ourselves, but for all of God's creatures. And if we do it wrong, the ending is not gonna be favorable. So to be able to say, if you want to have a good outcome, you personally want to have a good outcome, you have to do what you have to do to bring that outcome. And then you are a messenger of peace, where you take what you've learned and you share it with other people. So don't just take it and keep it in your own little sphere. Your job is to get others as we see the same thing. So that peace curriculum is part of what we use with the Streamlabs. And we've been doing this now for the Streamlabs. We've been using this curriculum for 4 years. And when I talk with
young children are responding to this?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, a 7-year-old is correcting his peers. He has not mastered, but he's aware enough, and he was not the only one. He's aware enough to say, hey, wait a minute, that's an example of what we learned, and we shouldn't be doing these things. So, and like I said, it's about the real world component of what they're learning, not just say you're learning it and you know how to do it, but do you know how to use it, and do you know when to use it?
So, can you give us an example of seeing children do this?
I'm sorry, the last part. Examples of...
Sorry, you observed children using these methods. I'm just wondering if you can give us an example.
Okay, so the children, for the end of the school, of the camp, they developed a skit. And their skit started out with some individuals being bullied, and how they retaliated, and how that retaliation led to something that wasn't productive for the people who were bullying or the victims of bullies. And they then in turn recognized that the only way that this was going to be resolved, this is what they put into their skit, the only way that it's going to be resolved is if everybody recognized the value of each other and stopped bullying and started being kind and considerate and apologizing and looking out for each other instead of just their own interests. So that's an example. And I mean 4-year-olds. I have experiences from my older ones, my 10 and 11-year-olds, doing the same thing, recognizing that if this bullying continues, if the property destruction continues, any of this negative continues, this is not going to end well for anyone.
Right.
They're not experts in it, so it's going to take more time to really get it to solidify, but they demonstrated that they understood it over the 8 weeks of the summer camp.
Yeah, that is brilliant. That is brilliant, because you're planting the seed, or to put it another way, you're building a foundation. And once you build that foundation, you can keep building on it. That's correct. So that's very, very inspiring. I find that very inspiring. So I'm trying to think, should we take a break now? Because I've got lots more questions for our two guests.
Well, we got 10 more minutes before break time. Yeah, we have 10 more minutes before the break time. So perhaps you can talk to our second guest.
Is Pastor Hodge
Hodge on the line?
Yes, she's on. She's on with me on
Yes.
in our Facebook and YouTube channel. So we see her beautiful face right here on screen.
Hi, everybody.
Pastor Hodge, I never have some questions for you as well. I just want to ask, don't worry, I will be including you because we all want to hear what you have to say. Dr. Muhammad, I'm just wondering, you talked about the source of the problems. What do you think the source of the problem is?
Okay, can you repeat what she's saying? I can barely hear her.
Okay. She's asking what is the source of the problems. First, she's gonna get Dr. Lynne Muhammad's view, and then she wants your view on what is the source of the problem. You know, the problem of violence between people. So after
gotcha.
Lynne explains, so you want Dr. Lynne Muhammad to explain first, and then Pastor Charetta to explain.
Well, I would like Dr. Muhammad to comment first, and then I've got some questions for Pastor Hodge. Yeah.
Okay.
So she want me to explain first?
She wants she got another question for Dr. Lynne, and then she'll ask you some questions.
Okay, sure.
All right.
Okay. So the source of the problem, and I'm going to connect it to the HWPO curriculum again because it's part of the content material that we are using. The source of the problem begins when human beings start doing things that separates us from our Creator. We think we're the Almighty this and the Almighty that, and we're not grounded. We're not grounded in our faith. We're not grounded in our communities. We're not grounded looking at those human characteristics. So when we try to be the omniscient instead of recognizing God as being the omniscient, then yes, we start to have these kinds of issues. So when we're talking to the children, when it all boils down to it, it's not that they have a problem with the other person. Something went wrong. And instead of them understanding how they get that situation rectified, they resort to violence. Right. And because if something doesn't go the way we want it to go, we can still turn things around, right? That's right. That's correct. So instead of them going towards their elders, instead of them going towards organizations that are already established to help bring that serenity back into place, they go towards the negative. They let the negative of this world take them off of their game. And then once they step away from that, it's easier for them to continuously do that because I'm going to use this word very. I'm saying it from my heart. Satan has made things seem so alluring and so beautiful that it pulls us away from those things that God has put out there. And because of that, we tend to move in that direction. The light is all glimmery and shiny, and they're making it seem so easy. If you can enticing, extremely enticing. So when we step away from the roles of that God has given us as human beings, when we step away from our sensitivities to other creatures that God has made, and we start doing things in the wrong way, then we're blinded. We're blinded by it, and then it's not impossible because that's why we have our interfaith activities going. It's not impossible to come back, but you're going to have to recognize that you need to come back. You need to come back to the way things were originally put into place. So right now, it's so easy to push a button on the video game and shoot someone. Mm-hmm. And then you push the button and it restarts it. So that person's right back. And while you're engaging in all of that, you're not recognizing that if this was a real person, that's someone's child. That's someone's parent. That is, that is a flesh and blood entity that's not going to come back when you push that button. So for us in this world, it appears that there's only one dimension and one megaverse and one of these things that's out there, but there's more than what you see. There's a whole lot more than what you see, and only God knows everything. So until we recognize that that's where our foundation is and that we actually adhere to it, it's going to be difficult. But if we get young, and this is why the educators, this is why we do what we do, if we get them young or we get them even if they're a little older and they haven't been completely indoctrinated, then we can get them back sooner. And even if because I practice nonviolent communication, and the person who sort of invented nonviolent communication at NBC was Marshall Rosenberg, who sadly has passed now. But I was privileged to meet him on a few occasions.
And I remember him saying what inspired him the most were the Buddhist tradition, the teachings from the Buddhist tradition. But he said Christians say that MBC is true Christianity. Muslims say that it's true Islam. Jews say it's true Judaism. And I know that it's true Buddhism. So, we have certain qualities as human beings that are universal, regardless of our religious beliefs or practices, our spiritual beliefs and practices. We have certain things in common. And Marshall was working with people from Israel and Palestine, and he wasn't getting anywhere. So, and I imagine he was experiencing quite a bit of frustration. He decided he wanted to work with the children. And that's when he started making progress. And he said he sees 4-year-olds use NVC. He said, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Mm-hmm. But, we could start at a very, very young age to change things. Sometimes we're not going to get anywhere with the parents, so we have to start with the children sometimes.
And that's why that does what it does. And we are getting the results that we're getting. And when they go home, they tell their parents what they've learned. When their parents come to our program, they're seeing it. They're seeing their child do this and do that. And it's not something that's going to be conquered in a day. It's not. Like I said earlier, it's going to take time. It's going to take time. But one of the things that we're doing too, not only is the Stream Labs working here in Chicago to try to, get this program to develop these messages of peace. Not only are we working, we're trying to get it into the Chicago public schools. We're trying to get it into other private area. And by doing that, we're not only going in ourselves and teaching, we have developed staff training programs. And so as we're talking to these administrators, we're saying to those administrators, right now, we will teach your teachers for you to help them get an understanding of what this is. So once we're done, and we go on to help the next set of schools, help the next set of schools that you all continue with this. So you're right. And starting with these young ones is critical, but we also have to recognize the village. The children are not isolated; they're in a village, and we have to make sure that the village is informed enough to be able to reinforce this. So, absolutely. Yeah. I'm thinking I want to take a break now because I want to start talking to Pastor Hodge. Okay. And I want to leave plenty of time for that as well, plenty of space for that. So I'm thinking before we start, let's take a break. I'm also having a problem with my stream name.
Okay, you want me to run the commercials?
We're going to have a little break, and we'll be back soon.
Okay, you want me to run the commercials? Okay, you got it.
Do you want to live in a world without war? Join our global peace movement. Heavenly Culture World Peace
Naima, I'm just going to take a quick picture of us
and other boundaries to achieve
while we on break.
Harmony in the global society. HWPL is committed to bringing world peace and cessation of war through peaceful dialogue between religious groups. I am Director Shin-Suk Kim of the HWPL Chicago branch of North America. Join us for our next gathering. Call 773-580-1501 and be a part of the movement for world peace. Email us at chicagohwpl@gmail.com.
Are you constantly arguing with your spouse? Are your children misbehaving and acting out? Is someone in your family abusing drugs? Have you been the victim of domestic violence? Are you grieving over the loss of a loved one? Let us help you restore serenity to your life. At Serenity Family Social Services, we understand that good mental health is the result of emotional well-being. Our goal is to assist you and your family in removing emotional distress and restoring harmony and balance to your lives. We offer individual, couples, and family counseling. I'm Howard Williams, CEO of Serenity Family Social Services. Call us today at 312-315-4820. That's 312-315-4820.
opportunity to transform the whole global society in the next 50 years. 50 years from now, the earth will be populated by a new generation of adults, many of whom are yet unborn. Our mission is to nurture them in childhood with love, guidance, and protection, and to raise them in healthy, happy families. If we impart values of compassion, generosity, and respect for fellow human beings in the next generation of children, they will create a world where people can live together in peace. This is our goal. Be a part of the transformation. Get your copy of the book, The Female Solution. Go to www.naimalatif.com. That's www.naimalatif.com.
Okay, are we back?
You're back.
Okay.
Okay, lovely. If you're listening to Female Solution with Zhana, author of Success Strategies for Black People and Affirmations for Parents. And I'm talking today with two amazing guests. The next guest I'm going to talk to is Pastor Hodge. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to hear a bit about your work and particularly about what you've been doing in Johannesburg, because I'm really excited about this. And I'm planning to go probably in about 2 years' time when I'm a bit healthier and fitter. Because we have a Buddhist center, we have a Tree Ratna Buddhist center in Johannesburg. So that's one of the reasons why I'd like to visit. Tell me about the work you're doing with Johannesburg.
I didn't hear her. What'd she say?
She wants, I'm sorry. She wanted to know about the work that you're doing in Johannesburg, you know, because we know that your ministry is located in St. Louis, but you also have an outlet in Johannesburg, a chapter in Johannesburg.
Okay.
Just want to know about
Yes. So
South Africa.
okay, yes. So my founder, which is Dr. Mehdi Joseph Katsuela, he's also an ambassador for the United Nations, establishing churches, South Africa, India, Ghana, and the work that's been going on right now in the process right now of building a school in India, Johannesburg, just preaching the gospel. Actually, before Dr. Mehdi came to America, he already had a church that was already founded in South Africa, which is actually continue going on from the sons and the daughters that he raised. They're still taking over in South Africa.
All right. So how long have you been doing the work out there? And how long have you been doing that work?
Well, he's been. Are you talking about me or the founder?
Well, let's start with the founder, and then we're going to definitely come on to you as well.
Okay, great. So my founder, which is Dr. Mehdi, he's originally from South Africa, from Johannesburg, and he's been there his whole life. And about 5 years ago, he got a call from the Lord to come to America to establish and to build here in America. So the church in South Africa has been founded over 20 some years.
Right. Okay. So he was originally from there. And so what work are you doing together?
I can barely hear you. I'm so sorry. I was telling Naima, I can barely hear, but I'm doing the best that I can. Can you repeat the question?
What work are you doing together?
No problem. Yes. What work are you doing together with the founder?
Oh, yes. With the founder? Oh, yes. So I work very closely with him. So as you know, it's funny that you say that. As of right now, as we speaking, we're doing homeless shelters. We actually was just blessed to get a building here in America, St. Louis, Missouri, where our church here is founded, on Christie Avenue. And we were just right now we in a process of establishing a shelter for battered women and children, where every year around this time we feed the homeless. We wasn't able to shelter last year because we didn't have an actual mortal building, brick building. And so this year we're able to do it. So we will be taking in women and children. We will be able to feed them, clothe them, not just minister to them the word of God, but actually teach them life lessons and life tools. As a matter of fact, about not too maybe about an hour from now, I will be going to one of our leadership classes that we held every first Saturday and every last Saturday of every month. And not just teaching biblical principles, but teaching life principles also. We all talk about the biblical aspect, but people need to have just daily principles on how to take care of your health, how to take care of your personal hygiene, how to fill out applications, how to dress for a proper interview and things like that. So we are in the process of teaching those things even now.
That's wonderful, because that's so necessary. What you talk about is so necessary.
Yes.
The Buddhist movement, Charetta, has a charity which we've had for many years based in India called Charetta, which means compassion. And they work primarily on healthcare and education, because you can't just teach people the teachings of the Buddha if they're struggling to eat, if they're struggling to feed their children, if they've got health issues that are not being addressed. So they offer practical solutions, and they do things like they have dorms where youngsters who live in villages where there's no school can come and stay and get an education.
Yes. And just to add to that, if you don't mind me adding to it, I overheard you and the conversation you all were talking about for as the violence and things like that that's going on in the world. And I just wanted to input on it. I teach, because I'm one of the youth pastors, and one of the things that I teach the youth, most adults are only hurt children, because they haven't been healed from the trauma and the things that they experienced as a child. So what happens is when you're not healed, you grow up with those same hurts. You grow up with those same disappointments. And what you happen to do is you look at people in the world, in your life, and think that they're going to hurt you the same way that you've been hurt coming up. And so that's a very serious thing that's going on right now in this time. We know that even in I can't speak for every culture, but some Black cultures, they teach that, it's if you go see a counselor or if you go see a therapist, something wrong, you crazy. Those are the things that were taught coming up, even myself as a young woman. And I didn't know until I got older that, going to see a therapist and going to see a counselor, that's actually healthy. That actually helps me not only with anger so that it won't grow into something major, but that also helps you to get past trauma hurt. Because right now, hurt people hurt people, but heal people as well. And your mother and your father only taught you what was taught to them. So if they wasn't taught in a correct way, they only passed down what was being taught to them. So now we're dealing with a generation of parents who also operating and hurting. And so what happened is they pass the hurt on to the child, which after so long, it turns to not only trauma, but it turns into madness. It turns to disappointment, and it turns to the point to where, I've been hurt a lot as a child. I ain't let nobody else hurt me. So what happens is you develop this thick skin to where you feel like now you have to protect yourself from everybody.
Yes, and I think we all do that to a certain extent. But I mean, specifically, I just want to touch on the experience of African American people, because I have a book called African American Psychic Trauma, and I've been writing about how we can heal ourselves for many years, because going back to slavery times, there's a lot of trauma that was never healed. People didn't have therapy after slavery. There's been
many, many generations now of people of African heritage who've been wounded, and they keep wounding others. We keep wounding others of the next generation, and it affects one generation after the next, and we have to heal it, or else it's going to continue to hurt people, to traumatize.
Well, I think one of the things for us to be able to heal and move on, we have to acknowledge that I'm hurt and that it's okay that I'm hurt and that I can heal. Because here's the thing. Some people don't want to be healed. And the reason why I say this is because, it's a crutch for them. Okay, so now that I'm healed, and now what's the next thing? What is it after I get healed? Where do I go from there? Because it's been a crutch. It's been something that they've been holding on to for so long. So I think, a plan needs to be put in place that, okay, what's the next step after healing? Because after you get them healed, you have to do something else with them. Or else they're going to go back to that same thing that kept them in bondage for so long. You got to first be able to identify, I'm hurt. Why I'm hurt. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times, even with the African American culture, we have this thing where we go back to slavery days. Yes, we acknowledge what happened in slavery, but where do we go from there? We have to make a choice and choose to want to move on in life and not stay in that same predicament. So I think for my answer to that question, your question is,
what is the solution after we heal? What plans are in place after a person heals?
The effect that it's still having on us. It has had on one generation after the next, after the next, after the next. And it's going to keep doing that until we heal it. So we have to take responsibility for healing ourselves. But, not everyone has that culture that therapy is helpful and healing. The therapy is therapeutic. Some people feel embarrassed or ashamed about going to therapy, or they think it's funny when somebody else goes to therapy. We have that quite a lot in Britain. It's changing now. It is changing, but there's still this thing like, oh, therapy, that's something that Americans do. We don't need therapy over here, and it's clearly untrue. Everybody needs healing. When I'm talking about African American psychic trauma, it doesn't mean I'm not aware that other races have also had psychic trauma. Of course they have. Everybody's had psychic trauma to a certain extent. But it's a question of what we're going to do about it now.
Yes. I wish I could hear her a little clearer so that I can be able to give her feedback, but she's not coming in clear.
She's saying, I'm going to repeat what you're saying, Zhana, because your sound isn't coming quite clear.
Because I'm using my phone, right? I'm not using the computer.
Okay. Well, the phone is better. It's better. Yeah, it's better. I just want to make sure that I have all of my audio up as far as it can go. But what she's saying, Pastor Charetta, is that everybody's been traumatized. A lot of times she's saying what happens in Britain, in the UK, people get ridiculed for going to therapists. They say, oh, therapy, that's some Americans do. We don't need therapy over here. So they kind of ridicule it like it's not necessary. But everybody's been traumatized, especially like you were saying, Pastor Charetta, the fact that our parents often were abused the way they were raised, and so they can only do what they know how, so they abuse us, so we're traumatized, and unless you acknowledge that you're hurt, it will just keep getting passed down generation after generation. And it's not just one race, it's pretty much a global thing that we're doing to each other as a human family. And so everybody has some level of trauma because everybody's been raised with a level of cruelty and lack of compassion. And parents who did that, they thought that was the right thing to do. They thought you're supposed to talk to your children mean and slap them around. They thought that's what you're supposed to do. And they didn't know how damaging it was. So we all have to admit that we're hurt so that we can heal.
Yes. And that's what I was saying, Naima, because a lot of people don't want to admit the hurt. Like I said, because after you get healed, what's the next step? If that's been your crutch for so long, I'm even reminded in the Bible where Christ talks about the man at the pool of Bethesda, you know, and he asked him this question. He said, "Do you want to be healed?" And the man said, yeah, but at a certain time of the year when the angels come to trouble the water, you know, people beat me to it. Well, here's the thing. Christ didn't ask him all those questions. He asked him one thing. Do you want to be healed? And that's the thing. And so after he asked him that, the next thing he told him, take up your bed. Pick your problem up. Pick the thing up that's been holding you bondage and leave from where you are. That's the thing. Do people want to move from where they are, from the place that's been hurting you from the longest? So once we come to that analogy and knowing that, because first you got to admit that you're hurt. And it's a lot of people, you know, that don't know or it hasn't registered that they're not healed. We have a lot of hurt people walking around the world that think they're healed, that are not healed.
That's true.
Yeah.
So it comes with knowledge. You have to first have the knowledge to know something is not right.
Never shows vulnerability. And the fact is that everybody feels weak sometimes, right? I was brought up to be a strong Black woman, which is fine. But everybody's weak sometimes. Everybody is vulnerable sometimes. And we need to acknowledge that as well, because it's part of our experience, right?
Right. Well, I have a question, Zhana.
I would personally not call it a crutch, because to me that's coming across as a bit judgmental. What we say in DC is that everything we do in order to meet a need. And everything everybody else does, they do in order to meet a need. So if we don't want to be healed, that means that we think somehow remaining wounded is meeting a need. And that's what needs to be addressed. How can we meet that need how can we heal and still, you know, let go of the past, let go of the trauma from the past? How can we heal and not be afraid to be healed, basically?
Well, I have a question, Zhana, that I'd like to ask, you know, all of us. Okay. African Americans tend to expect racism everywhere they go, and they're always ready to respond to someone treating them bad. Well, one experience that we had, all of us who went to the HWPL Global Peace Summit, there were many nations of people hosted by a wonderful team of people, many of them from Korea, many Koreans. And, you know, we had there, of course, Caucasians, Hispanics, you know, people from all over the globe. And there wasn't any incident of racism. There was no one treating anybody bad, no one cussing out anybody, no one snubbing anybody. The service was excellent, just all politeness, everything. So they're really the thing we always worry about wherever we go, that we're going to be treated bad because our skin color and all that. It just wasn't there. So that being the case, there was never a reason to be rude to anybody or short-tempered or unpleasant. There was no reason. And sometimes we use the expectation of racism or the perception of racism as an excuse for our own rude behavior to somebody. And there was no reason for it. There was nothing anyone did that could have in any way been misconstrued as racist or discriminatory at all. So, and I guess one of the things we're saying in terms of what do you do when the problem is gone, if you've been holding on to that as a reason for your own misbehavior.
Yes.
Well, there's nothing that you can, there's no crutch, there's nothing to blame. There's nobody to point to and say, oh, they treated me wrong or they discriminated. What if it's not there and you have to look at your own self and say, am I the one being rude? Am I the one being short-tempered? Am I the one being nasty? Am I the one being mean? Because nobody's hurting me. Why am I doing this? I can't blame anybody. And I think that's the challenge that we have.
Inside of us. It can be
Yes.
pain inside of us, and it's understandable. After everything that we've been through, it's understandable. So that, I think, needs to be addressed. It doesn't mean it's okay to be unfriendly or it's okay to be rude or anything like that. But I think it needs to be addressed, because if we're carrying those thoughts and those beliefs and those emotions, it means somehow we believe that it's meeting a need. Otherwise, we wouldn't be carrying them. Somehow, somewhere, and I think a lot of the time, because I find like the kind of Black people who are, I'm just going to talk about Black people right now, okay? The kind of people of African heritage who believe that racism is everywhere. They've probably been through a process. And then there's other Black people who are very, very naive about racism. And they think, oh, well, you know, these people don't mean harm. Someone can come into your church and shoot everybody in the church, or shoot some people into the church. And then they stand there, oh, we forgive him. And to me, I think that's too simplistic. I think it's oversimplifying to just say, right, we forgive him. That's just an example. But, you know, to me, what I observe is two different forms of awareness. So there are people who are very, very naive about racism and think, oh, we should just treat everybody the same. We should just treat everybody the same, which is how I was brought up. And then there's the people who are sort of hyper aware of racism and see it everywhere. And both of those, I think, need to be addressed. What do you think?
I agree.
What she say, Nima?
Well, and I don't know, I'll see if Dr. Lynne is still on and she wants to answer that as well. I
do.
Yeah, Dr. Lynne, you want to take that one? She was asking about what do we think about people who, the two extremes. One, people who kind of deny that sometimes we're being mistreated, and they overlook it like it's not happening and won't address it. And then the other extreme, where people see racism everywhere and they're always ready to overreact. You know, how she was asking our response to that. So I think Dr. Lynne Muhammad wanted to address that.
I wanted to address it from the standpoint of the curriculum, because again, I'm an educator.
Yes.
One of the parts of the education curriculum is about awareness of self. What do I bring to this table? Am I holding some deep-seated concern because of bullying or some experiences that I personally have had, and or things that I may have heard other people have had? Do I have a mechanism for getting my concerns addressed, where I don't have to resort to anger, to mistreatment of other people? Do I have that support system where I can go and say, hey, this happened to me. What can I do? What should I do? When I was not born into slavery, okay? Not physical slavery anyway. I was not born into it. But my great-grandparents, my elders were. During that time period, it was extremely popular for the elders to pull the youth aside and ridicule them and talk to them. And they did that as part of the seasoning. So when you were actually working in the field or in the house or wherever they were working as slaves, when they were experiencing that from their slave masters or their family, they did not resort to defense. They backed up. That the elders did it in a serious way, but still they came back with that love and that TLC. And so when they expected from the people out there in the field who were hurting them and doing it intentionally to break them, they did not resort to something that would end their life, because it was important for survival. So they taught them how to cope with it, but they had their elders to do that. And if we're disconnected, I don't trust my elders. I don't trust those old people. They don't know this. They don't know that. If we don't connect to them, they've been through what we're going through right now. Be it being oblivious to the damage that was done from slavery, or be it being in something where you're actually being discriminated against today. They've been through that. They can guide us. They can tell us. They can help us how to deal with that. But we have to know and respect them, and that's part of the curriculum. That's part of the piece of education.
I mean, to me, I just have to say some of the elders, I mean, I'm an elder myself now. Some of the elders are aware and can help us and guide us, and not everybody can. Some people are still in a state of denial, sadly. And that's how they cope. I mean, it's not their fault, but that is how they cope, because we all have methods of trying to get our needs met. That's what ABC is all about, trying to get our needs met.
I think that awareness that I do have this coping mechanism and this is how I deal with it helps that, and then once I'm aware of myself, now I'm more sensitive to what's your coping mechanism. Right. And then I can get along with you a lot better because I understand who you are. But I have to be willing first to recognize me and then to go out and recognize what's going on with others. And once I get to that point, it's easier for me. It's not me. It's not me. But it's so important. It has to start with self. It has to start with the individual. I don't think we can just go out and heal other people when we still have, such a deep need for healing ourselves. We need to deal with what's going on inside of us first. What do you think?
John, there's a couple of comments on our Facebook page I want to share. Zelda, our Monday morning mindfulness host, she says, Grand Rising, beautiful blonde queens. She said, love the colors. Thank you, Dr. Lynne Muhammad, for this awakening. So thank you, Zelda, for that. And then Viata, our Friday and Sunday evening host, says, thank you, Pastor Charetta, for your wisdom on this subject. So true about healing the childhood wounds. Do you believe adult addictions have a connection to the childhood traumas? That's a question. Yes. And Beata says racism on any level is tied to ignorance. Conscious, educated people rarely judge based on race. Well, I agree if the education is right. But this one thing I wanted to say regarding what Dr. Lynne said and the way that our parents believed they were preparing us for a cruel and sensitive world. I mean, I wasn't back in slavery either. I can't imagine the horror of it. But the belief that you have to break a child's spirit so that they don't rebel, so that they don't get beat to death, I understand that. But why are we still using that method of parenting today? That's the thing. Recognize we did that for what we thought was necessary. Now we need to stop. And that's what we're dealing with, because we keep breaking our children and we don't need to do that anymore. I don't know if we needed to do it then, but we thought we did, but we definitely don't need to do it now.
We beat their children during slavery because they were so afraid of what would happen if a white person saw a child doing, just not normal things, really. And some people still are doing that today, and there's no need for that. I'm not saying whether or not there was a need for it at the time, but there certainly is no need for that now.
Right. And I think that's the challenge we have, because we haven't learned a different method of parenting.
I think that's true, Naeem, if you allow me to say this, that what I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we have to be willing to unlearn and relearn. And not only that, we have to be willing to show not only our children, because I believe in the saying that it truly takes a village. It does. If you out of your mom's home, because back then when I was younger, if the neighbor saw you do something bad, the neighbor could discipline you and take you home and nothing will be said. Well, now we living in a time where, like, I think someone mentioned it earlier today, that if you discipline or even put correction on your tongue to discipline a child, you get backlash, whether it's in words or whether it's a weapon pulled out, and so I think that comes to us willing to unlearn and relearn, and not only that, admitting what I said earlier today, admitting that there is a problem. A lot of people don't want to admit that something is wrong. The way that we're doing things is not. Naeem, I think you said it earlier today, that growing up, we were taught that if you mother back in slavery, that you discipline a child. I know even with abusive men, a lot of young women think that when a man talks to them bad or crazy, or if he ain't knocking them upside the head, that they don't love them. Well, that was behavior that was taught. If I was younger and I saw my daddy knock my mama upside the head, but I saw my daddy later on in the day in the bed with my mama, then in my mind, that told me that my daddy loved mama. So when I grew up, that's what I adapted to. Okay, if you don't hit me upside my head or call me out my name, you don't love me. And so those are behaviors that are taught not only verbally, but even in the eye. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. we have a lot of visual learners nowadays, meaning if they see something, I got it. And so even with a child, kids are sponges, and you don't have to say anything. You can look at a child, and I know about with my son, and it's not to threaten him or anything, but if I give him a certain look, he know, okay, mama's not happy about that. And so growing up, if a child see it, oh, well, that's how it's supposed to be. Right. And so those are things that are being taught. But to answer your question, how do we fix the problem? I am all for that. That's what we need, the solution. We have to be willing to unlearn and relearn and show differently. It has to be a system put in place where it's okay for you to tell my daughter that she's out of line versus coming up to the school and you got the mama yelling at the principal and talking to the principal crazy, and then you got the child looking at the mama disrespect the principal. You need to change that atmosphere. The child needs to see the mom agree with the principal and say, hey, listen, no, you were wrong. This is not how I raised you. We have to put action in this and stop speaking, because if all we're doing is just talking, we're not going to see change. We have to put it in action.
I agree. Definitely.
Well, I agree with that, but sometimes the principal is wrong as well, and I think parents who behave that way, for me, we had a bad educational experience with themselves. In Britain, there was a time in the 1970s where children were being put into what was called ESN schools, which is educationally subnormal.
Yeah.
And if you're black, a lot of times you end up in the ESN school, also called sin bins. And the parents aren't doing anything about it. They just accepting what the teacher told them. They're living in a racist country. They experience racism on a daily basis, but they still believe that the teachers are being racist to their children. And a lot of black people in the 70s ended up in these sin bins at these ESN schools, educationally subnormal. And I think that parents have to take responsibility for challenging their teachers and the schools as well. Or else that kind of nonsense happens.
Right.
We have to take responsibility. My dad used to go to the school every year at the beginning of the year. He didn't wait till there was a problem. He would go up there at the beginning of the year and he said, my daughter can do this and my daughter can do that. And if she doesn't learn anything, it's your fault. If there's any problem with my daughter, it's your fault. So you let them know from the beginning that he was an engaged parent. And they couldn't make decisions about me and not expect there to be any consequences.
Yeah.
And I think that's parents need to do, not just black parents, but I do think that there's a lot of black parents, because they've had bad educational experiences themselves. They don't want to go to the school. They don't want to meet the teachers. They wait till there's a problem.
Right.
That's my thought.
Right. I know we got to take a break, Zhana, but I certainly, when we come back, like to find out what both of these ladies think about situations where you do need to defend your child if they're not being treated fairly, but how to do it respectfully so that you're not teaching your child to disrespect school authority. That's kind of a tightrope we have to walk.
It is.
Find that out when we come back from the break.
Okay.
We're going to have a little break.
All righty. We'll be right back. Stay with us. If you're listening online, call in 515-605-9325.
What happens when a group of people are kidnapped from their homes, smuggled away in chains, and held captive in a foreign land where they are tortured, raped, and forced to perform hard labor by the lash of a whip and under the constant threat of death? Slavery, the African-American psychic trauma. What happened to the doctors, writers, scientists, builders, educators, and spiritual leaders from Africa's golden age?
Naima, can you hear me?
And fell into slavery.
Yes.
I think one of the things that
we can still be here.
Hold on. Conspiracy to hide your true identities. Do you have psychic trauma? Take the test on page 22 of the book and see. Order it online today at www.naimalatif.com. www.naimalatif.com and get your personally autographed copy of the book. slavery, the African American psychic trauma. We all say we would like to be wealthy, but wealth isn't determined by how much money you have. Wealth is determined by your power to define what money is. The dictionary defines money as something used as a way to pay for goods and services and to pay people for their work. So how would you like to have access to an unlimited source of money? Money that is not taxed by the government. Money that increases as you share the opportunity with others. Money that you can use to pay for goods and services and pay people for their work. I'm talking about Bitcoin. It's the future of independent wealth building. Bitcoin is the new money that you control. Get started building your wealth. Call 312-849-3456. That's 312-849-3456.
Okay, and we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Now, I'm having a problem with this video, so if I disappear, that's because it's telling me right now that the show is finished, but we're meant to have another hour. So I'm on the phone, so hopefully I'll stay plugged into the show. But keep my fingers crossed. This technology confuses me sometimes, to be honest. I don't always understand it. So I would like to come back to this incident that happened that I found truly shocking. And this is another trigger warning. This is about overt violence. And I'd like to ask my two guests what their responses are in terms of how something like this could be prevented. My two guests are Dr. Lynne, founder of the STEAM Labs, a very, very experienced educator, and Pastor Charetta Hodge of the Christhood International Ministries of St. Louis. This incident where a 15-year-old girl was killed by a 17-year-old boy, this is very traumatic to talk about. I'm sure it's very traumatic to hear about. You know, when you put your child on the bus in the morning to go to school, you don't expect her to be killed on the bus on the way to school. You expect her to be safe and come home safely that evening. And this is very, very upsetting. I'm wondering, for both of my guests, do you have any thoughts about how things like that could be prevented? These kind of incidents. It's very shocking. I find it very shocking. And I'm sure you do too.
I didn't hear the question.
She was asking how acts of violence can be prevented, particularly incidences like what happened in London, where a schoolgirl was I think strangled to death on a bus.
He still has out with this massive knife.
Oh,
really shocking.
Oh, okay. So it was a stabbing. So it seemed like a random act of violence, but I don't know. Zhana, did the young man and young lady know each other?
Yeah.
Was it
All I know is he offered her some flowers.
Okay, so he was mad because she publicly rejected him.
Was not interested, and then he whipped out this massive knife, which is called a zombie knife.
So he probably experienced rejection with his parents.
Yeah, right. Sounds like he had some deep issues regarding rejection and snap.
Yeah. Not only rejection, but not experiencing love. That's a part of rejection.
Right.
The impact that would have had on all the other people in the bus that morning. Apparently, everybody was just running away because they were probably scared.
So part of what you're talking about is us not being the counseling that was mentioned earlier, and us not feeling that the appropriate thing to do is to get counseling. And counseling doesn't have to be when you are an adult. It can also be when you're a teenager, when you are younger, when you're your twilight years, when you're moving into you're in the geriatric stage. Counseling is a human thing that we need. My son, when he was in college, invited me to his university. They had buddied up with two other universities and some businesses. They did what they bride walk. And most of the people in the bride walk were college students, because for the first time you're on your own. You have to make decisions about things, and your parents are not always there to see and whatnot. Domestic violence amongst college students is on it's high. It's very, very high. And you're thinking that this person is earnestly in love with you, or you want them to be earnestly in love with you. And like this person, maybe they didn't understand how to deal with rejection. And there's a whole lot of domestic violence that just goes unanswered. Date rape.
Really? I didn't know that it was like that among university students.
Yes, against whether it's a male or female that's the victim of this, it's something that needs to be addressed. And so to get us be aware of all of this early on, and the fact that if you are not handling things correctly, that there's a way to get the assistance that you need, such as the counseling. So this particular thing that they were doing was called a bride walk. And they said a lot of people get married when they're in college, or married to the person they meet in college or in high school. And that can be a very toxic relationship, and you're learning that this is okay. And domestic violence, I was part of a domestic violence group for a number of years, until emotionally it just became too much for me. And I started to get to the children more. But domestic violence is a normal thing, unfortunately, and we think it's okay. And we don't see it as though you're getting a gun, in this case a knife, and killing someone. I can disrespect you, slap you, do all these things to you physically and emotionally, and no one is going to put me in jail for it. Or actually, you can be put in jail for it, and you can lose your freedom. But we don't see that. We see this is happening in the house, and it's no big deal. We don't need to worry about it. So I'm saying that we as a village need to be aware of our teens, need to be aware of our younger children, need to be aware of our older children, ourselves, and look at how are we dealing with relationships, whether it's at my job or my home or whatever it is. And if it's not a healthy way of dealing with it, we need to get that assistance. The people on the front,
I mean, we've had in the Blogging Carnival Nonviolence, a couple of people blogged about escaping from domestic violence. And one talked about how domestic violence makes you feel, right? How it affects your self-esteem. Another lady was from Nigeria, and her father arranged a marriage for her with a man who's older than him. And the man was beating her, and her father was saying that nobody in our family has ever got divorced. So in other words, to get divorced would be a shameful thing. But in the end, she escaped from that marriage, and then she was experiencing death threats. So I think she came to this country as a refugee or asylum seeker. Because she was experiencing death threats. She helped other women escape from domestic violence situations. And she helps other women to start new lives, basically, to build new businesses. So, because of what she went through, she's very, very keen to help others, and she does so. And I think that's pretty amazing, really. Her name was Mercy McKenzie. So if you want, I can drop the link. It'll probably be tomorrow, Monday. I can drop the link on our Facebook page.
Yes. Yes, she did an excellent interview. Before we take the caller that's on the switchboard, I just wanted to ask a question regarding when people are aware that someone in their family is committing domestic violence. Maybe you have a sibling who's got a hot temper, and maybe you know that they're beating their spouse or their children. Do you intervene, or do you feel like, well, it's not really my business, but you know it's happening? You know that there's violence. You know that the children are getting beaten and it's severe, and in the name of discipline or whatever, the parents are out of control, or the husband or the wife is beating the spouse and out of control, anger, violent, causing pain, situations where and people even have listened to couples fighting, neighbors, and that there's violence going on. Do you call police, or do you say, well, I don't want to get involved? I mean, are we stepping up when we know that there is violence being perpetrated against somebody, or do we keep silent because we don't want them to get mad at us, cuss us out, tell us it's none of our business? What do we do when we know it's happening?
Well, I would say, they have this thing now where it's you see something, say something. And
Say your name so that we all know who's speaking.
I'm sorry.
Oh, are you taking the caller on the line?
I'm saying when you speak, please can you
say your name so she knows.
So that we know who's speaking.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So this is Pastor Charetta, beautiful. Okay. So what I was saying was, so the term "you see something, say something" should be put in place even more, because if we continue on to just know that somebody's being abused or know that somebody is being mistreated, even children, what happens is that turns to a generational thing which never gets broken.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, that's what we're dealing with right now with the sexual abuse, with the rape. You have a rapist in the family and you're told not to say anything if uncle or auntie is touching, and then this child grows up with this trauma. And then you wonder why they don't want to get married is because somebody took their innocence. And so now they don't want to share. And so even now with the youth, it's called those uncomfortable conversations that you're kind of forced to have. I think if you see something, you should say something, because when you say something, you break the cycle. You not only break the cycle, you saving somebody's life, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, or mentally. Because if you take and you do these things, even if you hear a man beating a mother and the child hears it, mentally that child grows up to think that that's okay, and he turns into one, whether it's a man or woman, the woman turns into, oh well, I don't want a man because a man, I heard a man beat my mama my whole life, so then she changes and she want a woman because she don't have faith and want a man. So that ruins the opportunity of her having a husband. And then it goes on to having children. Now she don't want children because she don't want her children to deal with or face the things that she's been faced with. So I think to answer your question, Miss Anima, you see something, say something. Yes, because that saves a life. We have to come to a place where we break protocols. We break the things that that we was once taught. And I'm reminded of a teaching that I even teach the youth. A manager in a job. A manager tells you what to do, but a leader shows you what to do. So you have to be able to distinguish the difference. Don't let this thing go into a cycle where it continues on. You break it by saving somebody's life, by saying something. Yes. And when you say something, you allowing a child that would have grown up to be maybe a terrorist, you allowing him the opportunity to live to be a good child, because of what he would have seen maybe growing up. Someone said something and put a stop to that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Did you hear my question?
Oh, you want to ask it again, please?
Yeah, sure. The Bluest Eye, which I think is her first novel.
The Bluest Eye. Are you familiar with that book? I've never read it, but
me neither. I haven't.
I know it's very popular.
It is a classic, but it's been banned in a lot of schools in a lot of states now. I read about this a few years ago. I was reading about it again today. She deals with domestic violence and incest, an assault on a young girl. And because of that, a lot of schools and a lot of different states are banning it now. But she's talking about something, it's like, to me, The Color Purple also deals with this subject as well. And so there's, what is the other book? I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, Maya Angelou's first book. They all touch on this, on the rape of children. The rape of young girls, children, by adult men who are in their families or who are close to them. And I really love The Color Purple, especially the film, because there were so many women who've been through this. I have met so many women who've been through this when they were children, and they've never seen their story told on the screen before. So that's why I think, that thing was so important. These books are so important, because I think personally that we like to pretend that these things don't happen in the Black community.
They are rampant.
About this, basically. We like to pretend that it doesn't happen in our communities, but it does.
I think the statistics are 1 in 4 women have experienced some form of sexual assault. That's 25%. That's pretty high. And you just think of the ones who they never get reported or even talked about, but it's very high. And that means there was trauma, like our guests have been saying, there was trauma that's been passed down over the generations and never addressed and never healed. And so if families just keep it quiet, well, uncle so and so, just stay away from it, or aunt so and so, or don't don't be alone with them. If you never talk about it and children are traumatized, they're not fit for a relationship because their whole experience of intimacy has been skewered. It has been destroyed because there's no trust there, because they have been violated. And when we don't talk about it, then it never heals. I think those books that you mentioned have been banned. If we did have those books in the school, it might open a door to be able to talk about it. And we have to have counselors available at our schools to deal with children that are going through that in their lives right now. That's why so many children are, and they've said that the numbers of sexual assault of children on other children has increased. And we have to look at where it's coming from.
That is awful.
Yes.
That is awful. And if we never get to talk about it, we never get to talk about what
it's a form of violence.
Then how can we heal it?
You have to provide a safe space, as they say, for people to talk about it. Work like what Pastor Charetta is doing, work like with Dr. Lynne is doing, the things that we're doing in our circles, whether it's our ministry, our classrooms, places where we can talk to youth and let them know there's no judgment when they confide in us, and let them know that we will help them by getting them the help they need, and make sure that we find a way to keep them protected. Sometimes you have to remove a child out of a home. Now, the challenge that we have is that our foster care system, just like everything else that's been ruined, has been monetized so much, where you have people who are getting into foster care because they want to get the money that comes from being a foster parent, and they might be more abusive than the child's situation that they left. I don't know if they have that system in the UK, Zhana, with foster care, and then you pay parents to take care of a child that's in distress until the parents can get themselves together or whatever. But it's because it's been abused by too many people who don't have the right spirit, the right incentive, the right reason for why they're in it. So many children have horror stories of having been placed into foster care to get them away from abusive parents, and the situation they got into was even more abusive. Matter of fact, we've had a few guests on that have had that experience. So how do we heal what's inside of people so that they don't damage other people? And how do we, like you'd ask, well, how do we prevent these things?
Word about this before I go on to the next topic, which I'm really excited about.
Yes.
It's the HWPL Peace Summit. I just want to say this. I've done many practices to heal, and to heal myself, I've taught many practices to my students, and I've written about them in various different books. The thing that's helped me heal the most is nonviolent communication. Yes. And I am passionate about it. Nonviolent communication is it's based on empathy, and empathy is about listening. So it's about listening to ourselves, listening to each other. Not just, people say all the time, you need to talk to your children, which is very true, but you also need to listen to them.
Yes.
And I just want to put in the plug for NBC here, because it's so healing. It's such a powerful method, and we can get away from all the judging and blaming.
Yes.
Which we call jackal speech. Jackals are expressions of unmet needs. So if someone is saying, "Oh, that's a terrible person," or "that was an evil thing to do," or whatever, using that kind of moralistic language, that's a form of jackal speech, and that's expressing an unmet need. So that means that we've got needs there that need to be addressed.
Absolutely.
And when we address those needs, then we can get away from the kind of language that separates us from each other, which is in NVC called jackal language, right? NVC is all about connecting from the heart.
Right.
So I just wanted to put in my little plug.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I'm gonna get you my blog today, Zhana. I promise.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yes.
On my website, which is called the Blogging Carnival for Nonviolence, there's a page of NVC resources. So if you want to know more about NVC, please check that out, or check out the Blogging Carnival for Nonviolence on Facebook, or check out Success Strategies for Black People on Facebook. But I must stress as well that the Blogging Carnival for Nonviolence is for everybody, regardless of racial or cultural background or age or gender or ability or disability or any other difference.
Yes.
We're open to everyone, and NVC can help everyone. I mean, I'm well into my 60s now, and I'm still having therapy to heal me.
You're never too old.
From my past and things that happened in the past.
Yeah.
Trauma basically. But I found an amazing therapy, and I really recommend it. And if you want to know more, message me on Success Strategies for Black People.
Yeah.
On the Blogging Carnival for Nonviolence.
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm not even talking about my personal stuff.
Well, I mean, we all have it. But Zhana, I know we got a couple of callers, and I don't know, Pastor Charetta, do you have to leave us soon? I know you've got another appointment. Do you have to leave us at the? Okay, she's got to leave. So callers 636-980 and 827-731. If you can hold on.
Tell us about your experience.
Yes. So she wanted you to tell us about your experience. What with the HWPL?
Me?
Summit. Yes. Before you go, tell us about your experience.
Okay, so this is Pastor Charetta again. My experience was amazing. It was something that I've never experienced before. Different cultures, different religions getting together. Nobody really trying to say, stick to one religion or tradition. Everybody just sharing different point of views of why they believe what they believe and, where they come from. I thought it was very impactful. I thought it was very educational. I enjoyed it. I took a lot from it. And I'm looking forward to, attending again next year, hopefully. Just listening to Chairman Lee on a Christian aspect, him having a one-on-one relationship with the Lord, and having a experience of God, showing him what his destiny or what his desire for his life, and then bringing it there and sharing it with us. I think it was very impactful.
Excellent. Tell us one thing that you've learned. Can you share with us, please, one thing that you've learned?
One thing that you've learned. Can you share with us one thing that
I've learned?
Yes.
I learned that we are one body when it comes to the things of God. I learned to be open-minded and not to be traditional or religious. And what I mean by that is, growing up, you've taught a certain thing, and a lot of people growing up in the Black church, you think because your mom went to that church and your grandma went there, you supposed to attend there. And I've learned, even attending the church that I'm at now, that's not always true. Be open-minded to other people's religion and why they believe what they believe and what made them believe the way that they believe. Be open-minded, because when you're closed-minded, you actually cut yourself off to learning. And because I'm always a student of life and learning, I'm very open-minded to learning new things and just learning about new people and new cultures, and not being judgmental. We can be judgmental in all different ways, not just racist, but we can be judgmental because of a sex of a person, or because of, a religious of a person. And so not be judgmental, but compassion, having a compassion for the human race, and just loving, because we should love and have compassion for one another. So those are the things, like Miss Naima was saying, when I hit South Korea, it was something totally different. I didn't hear cursing. I didn't hear any rudeness. I didn't hear anybody going off move, things like that I would hear in America, and so it really opened me up. And I was able to take what I learned in South Korea and bring it back home and share it with people from home. I was able to, even though I'm a nice person, it allows me to be even nicer.
Yes. Yes.
It allows me to even compliment women even the more. If I said, maybe 2 compliments within a week, I made it my business that I did even 3 more compliments. Hey, beautiful, how are you? Your hair is beautiful, because of what I experienced by leaving America. So it was very impactful. It was eye-opening, and it changed my life for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Wonderful. That is wonderful. Yeah, because I was going to ask both you and Dr. Muhammad, you don't have to believe in God to do these practices, do you? Because being a Buddhist, I do not believe in God. And I don't
I didn't hear her. What she said?
She said she's a Buddhist. She was trying to hear what you said because Zhana is Buddhist, and she was saying that one doesn't have to have the same belief in God in order to practice those principles, because some religions might not believe in a specific entity to worship, but still they can live those godly principles. They can live those principles of compassion for each other.
Yeah, because I'm a firm believer. You treat people the way you want to be treated, even though that's a biblical principle, period. But it should also just be a life lesson, period. You should want to treat people the way that you desire to be treated.
Right. That's the universal principle.
Yes.
And
you don't have to go to church or go to any, to the Lamas or anything like that to learn it. You should want to do that. Reciprocity should just be, you should just want to do that, because what you put out is what you're going to receive.
Right. That's what we have to learn, and that's what we have to teach our children, so that they understand that you reap what you sow. You're going to get back what you give. That is what we need to teach. So we got to take one last break, Zhana, and I think we have to say goodbye to our sister, Pastor Charetta Gates Hodge. She's got to leave us for her next appointment, but we thank you so very much for being with us.
Thank you very much for being on my show. I really appreciate it, Pastor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I answered the questions to the best that I could, because it's kind of hard hearing you. Hopefully the next show that I'm able to hear you clearer, and I can get really more detail in the questions. But I enjoyed you, beautiful, amazing women, today. And I thank you so much, and I love you. And may the rest of your week be as amazing as you are.
Well, thank you so much. Likewise.
That's a lovely thought. Thank you for that.
Yes. Blessings.
Blessings.
Blessings. Bye-bye now. Do we need to take another break, Naima?
Yes. We'll take another break, and
okay, let's do that. Here. I'm not hearing anything.
Yes, and we'll be right back. And of course, if you're listening online, we want you to join this conversation. Give us a call, 515-605-9325, and press 1 when you're ready to speak. And of course, if you called in and call dropped, call right back. We'll take you now. 515-605-9325, and press 1, and we will take your call. Open your mic and get your thoughts. So you got it?
Yeah. Well, I have been pressing buttons. That doesn't mean anything has happened, though.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll do it from this end. We'll be okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mama Joy. And I'm Reverend Rosemary. Join us every second Saturday of the month 12 noon to 2 p.m. Central Time, here on the Female Solution Global Radio TV show for Neighborship of Joy. We'll have powerful conversations inviting women to walk in the light. So call in 515-605-9325 and press 1 to speak to the host. You can also join us live on the Female Solution Facebook page and YouTube channel. So see you on the second Saturday on the Neighborship of Joy.
Hey, it's time to take charge of your health. I'm Bianca, your holistic life coach, and every Friday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I'm here on the Female Solution to empower you to make choices that will assist your evolution to abundant health. I'm also blogging every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at Soul Purpose Healing, where I bring you a spiritual chiropractic adjustment to bring you back into alignment with our Creator's love, compassion, and wisdom. Join me every Friday morning at 8 a.m. and Sunday evening at 8 p.m. for a time of unity, enlightenment, and love vibration. Shalom.
All right, we're back. And
Okay, we're back. So we'd like to ask both of you ladies, how did you come to travel to Korea for the HWPL Peace Summit? And what's the first thing you noticed when you first got there?
Dr. Lynne, you want to answer first?
Yes, I will. So my experience with HWPL started when I was chauffeuring my husband around to be a part of some interfaith dialogue. And that was HWPL was sponsoring these interfaith dialogues to get religious leaders to see not differences between our religions, but commonality. To not disrespect another person's religion, but learn to respect. And they gave us topics. They gave us topics that are pretty much embedded in one or two scriptures, but when you look at it, it's there for majority of the scriptures. So it winded up being a really, really informational time for me to see how common our books are, and also to see and show respect for the religious leaders from other religions. So that's how I got started. I was chauffeuring my husband; he was a part of the dialogue, and then I became part of the dialogues from there. But while I'm talking with these leaders and we're dialoguing, I'm still thinking, what about the children? You know, this is not just something that the adults need to know. You know, we have our positions based off of what we experienced when we were children. So what about doing something with the children? And that's when I learned that HWPL had a peace education program, and that got me started. So my first trip over to Seoul, Korea, was as a religious leader, but my second and third trip over there was as a peace educator, and I am so thrilled that I'm now in that space.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Wonderful, yes.
When you first got there, when you first got to the Peace Summit, what's the first thing you noticed?
When I got there, the number of people.
Yeah, when you first arrived.
Yes. When I made the pilgrimage to Mecca, which Muslims try to make at least once in our life. I've made the pilgrimage.
Sure.
And when I was on the pilgrimage to Mecca, I noticed that all the millions and millions of people, we were all there with a common goal in mind. And you expected there to be some commonality because we were all there with the same goal. This particular summit, the goal was one. There was one common goal. But you had your perspective. I had my perspective. But what got me was the humanity that we saw. It was how we aligned ourselves with each other. We greeted each other. We made friends. We exchanged contact information. And some of those individuals I still have contact with. And it's just a way to just see God's creation, to see the Creator's creation in a way where, or just the creation period, in a way where all you can do is say, praise be to God, or praise be to the Creator, praise be to whatever higher source you see, is to say, I didn't do this. You didn't do this. This was done by an entity that had a design that made all this stuff work. And so it's humbling. It's extremely humbling to be a part of that. And one of the most profound things that I heard, this was in on my second trip. A religious leader, a political leader, who was a part of getting the Slavic nations to stand on their own away from Russia. His country was given its autonomy back, and he was the ruler at the time, so he signed the document. When I heard him speak, and this goes back to a whole lot of what I'm hearing from this particular discussion and some of the things that I know Sister Naima has been doing with her effort, one of the things that he said is, when you have an entity that has been subjected to a dictatorship or a ruling party that has not been looking out for their best interest, when you have people that have been pulled away from the original design and put into servitude or bondage or whatever it may be, releasing them is not enough. The Emancipation Proclamation, the shackles being unlocked and letting people go, that wasn't enough. In his culture, he recognized it wasn't enough to have that signature on the document to say that his country was ready to have their own leadership. There are decades and generations of scars that need to be addressed. And you were asking the question earlier about how do we correct this? How do we deal with the parents who were themselves not disciplined in a way that is holistic? How do we deal with generations of things that have been done wrong, and now we're trying to rectify it? Right. He recognized that, and he said that, and that's part of the curriculum for the peace education program. I'm not advocating peace education just for the children. I'm advocating it for the adults too. Yes. That curriculum, that HWPL, I think the adults should be using it too. I think the adults should learn some of those same vocabulary concepts. And that whole concept of empathy, that's embedded. And you don't have to wait until you're taught that you should be empathetic towards another human being. That butterfly that pollinates, all of these things that has been put in place so that we can have the serenity that we get from nature, all of those pieces are there for a reason. And if I'm not empathetic, I might go squash all of the ants, which then in turn makes the roots of the grass not grow. And until we can see that harmony that exists in nature, until we can see that and understand our role in that, we will never be there. And that is part of what peace education and the nature of the HWPL program is about. Because Chairman Lee, the person who started this, he was standing in a field and he saw devastation. How are you going to drop a bomb and it's not destroyed plants? That bomb is going to annihilate whatever is in that space. And it's not just the human life loss is massive. It's an atrocity that should never happen again. But and nobody should die senseless, whether it's one person or a million people. Nobody should die senseless for something like that. But when you're killing the trees, where's our food going to come from over time? It's not just the death of today. It's the death that's going to be in existence for a while. So HWPL, this is me talking right now, HWPL's message in my eyes should be everywhere, whether it's in the courtroom, if it's in the boardroom, if it's in the nursery with the infant, or in the hospital, in the OR, where the patient's asleep, but there's someone over them, people over them taking care of their needs. That curriculum that we use for the peace initiative, the things that we're learning to do as religious leaders, and the dialogue, all of these pieces of HWPL, in my eyes, should be a part of our lives, should be a part of our everyday.
Absolutely. I agree. And Zhana, you want to take a caller now? Zhana, you want to take your caller now? Area code 872.
Yes, I will. Yes, sorry to cut you off. Who's on 872-731? Please join us and introduce yourself. This is Zhana with the Success Strategies program. Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi, welcome to the show. Can you say your name, please? Yes, my name is Rashida Ali. Hi, welcome to the show. Thank you very kindly. You know, I was thinking about something that was said earlier when it comes to people stigmatizing others when they go through trauma and they vocal. You know, they said, you know, for comfort from their surroundings, but instead, in my experience, they label you. For example, me. When I was speaking out because of oppression, my grandson was killed, and when I understand death, I had consecutive deaths in my family after that. But the trauma was my grandson was an outstanding student, 25-year-old man making over $130,000 a year working. And it was traumatizing because it was unsolved homicide. But I have faith in the belief of God. But every time I went out, it seemed like it was like I was walking over dead bodies in the African American community. So I decided to do something for myself and get, you know, some therapy from professionals. But then I also did some research on the conditions, the system that put passive fear in the slaves. And it's exactly, in my opinion, it's exactly the same way. It developed legally, transformed into, you know, the Black community. And so, you know, what transformed us into docile behavior. And with the slave codes that were among most of us, which was a very violent law, they created those samples of hundreds of others past the, you know, in the 17th century and beyond. So I was thinking that in order to resolve the murders and homicides among people of color, we need to do what you all are doing, talk about it, and create some ways to sort of eliminate it, because the slave codes that was taught for over 377 years, which avoided preaching and teaching and writing or organizing, has been, in my opinion, programmed in our DNA. So in the African American community here in Chicago, you speak of unsolved homicide, and with concerns, not just because of your family members, but walking over dead bodies in a reputable community. So I decided to do some research, and I found out that Africans have higher levels of homicide, and Asians have higher levels of homicide than the Europeans. So I had decided to do some more research, because I see that, in my opinion, that the slave code and the social coding that the Europeans did has affected us all, people of color. So I wondering if we could get a lot about our professionals, psychiatrists and stuff, to team up and develop a forum, because this has become really bad. A lot of the blacks are killing and destroying many other black people. And when you mention it to other black people, they make it like, well, other people are killing or there's nothing to die. So if you can't develop some strategies or some type of platform to help heal and cure your own people, then you're a sad case. I think you're not accountable in your own community. So I am willing to join on with a team. I'm with a team of sisters that we band together in my religious community, and I want to, sort of do something better because outside of my little worship group that I attend, others in the social arena where I discuss this with them, they made me feel victimized all over again and shut you off. I've even been called crazy because I told them I'm traumatized, I'm traumaphobic. And everybody has a phobia, because no one is God. So traumaphobic only means that you're fear of injury. So I did some more research on it, and I found out that if there's unsolved, this is what the Europeans say anyway, if the unsolved homicides are among a family member, they become traumatized. And traumaphobic is not a mental illness, it's a conditioning that's done because of the situation and puts fear in people. Phobic only means fear.
Right.
Traumaphobic is fear of injury. And fear of injury, in my case, was walking outside and pure fear, seeing somebody stab, like the rest of the community, and living in Chatham, which a lot of celebrities did live here, and seeing walking over 10 bodies dead, really on the ground with no war zone. So I think it's programming from the DNA of the slave master. It was coded and still is being coded. I'd like to know what you think, because you're an interesting person that seems like you talk with a lot of concerns and logic.
So Zhana, she wanted to know.
Personal response?
Yeah, she wanted to know what you thought about this. Is it something that's in the DNA? Are we, maybe African Americans, our DNA is reflecting trauma, and maybe the those who are descended from slave owners or enslavers, maybe their DNA is passing down a certain level of, I don't know, cruelty or violence. Why does this keep happening? So she wanted your thoughts on that.
Okay, well, my thoughts are very much on the one hand, yes, it is in our DNA because our ancestors were so traumatized, and it gets into our bones, it gets into our blood, and it's going to keep affecting us and affecting each generation until such time as we heal it. So that's my thought. But I mean, according to the Buddhist teaching, we all have evil inside of us. We all have negativity inside of us. We all have destructive energies inside of us. And it's a question of overcoming them. That's basically our job, right? That's why we do spiritual practice. And just to be very clear, I don't believe in a God or anything like that. And I don't worship any God, being a Buddhist. So, I mean, we all have goodness inside of us. We all have evil and destructive energies inside of us. And through spiritual practice, we can cultivate the positive, and we will eliminate the negative by doing that. So that's what I think. Anyway, I don't know if you find that useful or interesting or helpful at all.
Well, one thing, I know we only got a couple of minutes, but one thing I was gonna say real quick about the idea of, is this something possible to overcome? That's one of the things we saw at the HWPL Peace Summit. People didn't have that in them, and you had blacks, whites, Asians, Americans, Europeans. We had people from all over, but they demonstrated that it's possible to create that heavenly culture by everybody choosing to treat each other kindly. And we can do that here in America as well. I think that was the biggest lesson, to be a place where they were like our guests have said, there was no cursing. Nobody was angry at anybody. Nobody was rude. It was not there, which means it wasn't inside the people. So each of us has to heal from the trauma that we experience so that we don't pass it on. And our philosophy on the female solution is always that we have the power to transform the world by the way we raise the next generation. And so all of us can begin to do that now.
It starts with the individual. Personally, I'm more interested in working with parents. So I think that the people who want to work with children, brilliant. That's great. Do that. But yeah, we're all born with negative, destructive tendencies. If you look around us, if you look around the world that we inherited from our ancestors, you can see all the negativity there that's affected us. It's been affected us for many generations. Yeah, so I think we all have it inside of us, and blaming other people and saying they're wrong, or saying they should be doing this, or they should be doing that, or saying that they're evil, all the different things that we say about each other, they're unhelpful. They're not helpful. We don't need to blame other people for our problems. We need to take responsibility for our healing. And when we blame other people, in some ways we're blaming ourselves, because we all have these issues. We all have different issues going on. They might not be all the same, but we all suffer, as the Buddha said. We all experience suffering. So we need to heal ourselves, and then we can heal the world. Those are my thoughts.
Yes, I agree. I agree. If we heal ourselves, we can heal the world. So I think we got a moment for Dr. Lynne Muhammad for one last observation before we go.
Yes, please. Okay, can I just say, I don't know if we're going to have time to fully talk to this caller, but I do have a caller. Yeah. Yes. Hello? 872.
Sorry, I think that was Rashida. Yeah, I think that was Rashida who just got off the line.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so yes, Dr. Muhammad, have you got some final thoughts you'd like to offer us?
She might have had to step away from her phone.
That's all right. That happens, right? So what's the next step? What would you say is the next step, Naima?
The next step is for each person to examine themselves. And I think it's very wise that Rashida is seeking counseling, even though sometimes socially we're not encouraged to do so. But if you know you've been traumatized, go get counseling. Find a therapist, find someone that you can trust, and take the time to heal your soul, because until you do, you're going to always be in pain, and you're going to always be triggered every time you see another act of violence. And when you're able to get therapy where a person is able to help you to see that the world isn't this horrible place, but you're being drawn back to that thing that you've been traumatized by, and that's why you keep re-experiencing it. So you have to literally change your vibration so that you're attracting to you a different experience. But as long as you're in that state of emotional trauma, you will keep re-experiencing the thing that is hurting you until you're able to heal from that trauma. And
that's right, because
therapy is necessary.
We do keep repeating the same.
Yes.
The same issues, the same traumas, the same challenges over and over again through different lifetimes.
Yes.
Until we heal them.
Until we heal them.
Reinforce them, because that's what's familiar. That's what we're used to. Until we heal it. So this lifetime offers us an opportunity to heal.
90 seconds.
And once we've healed ourselves, we can heal the world.
That's why we're here, to heal ourselves and heal the world. Well, thank you so much, Zhana. It's been a fascinating show, and so grateful. And we've got one caller. I believe this is Lois from Chicago. You got about 30 seconds before we go. Go right ahead with your question, comment, statement.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. God is so good. Thank you for the show. You know, the problem with being traumatized is that the 60 seconds is not offered to our people. We have to go along with this scar on our back from, I think, from the slavery time. Some of us are still suffering from what our foreparents went through. But it's not offered to our people. I saw a little girl, 3 years old, walking in front of the bus on South Shore Drive, and the bus ran over and smashed her.
Oh, that's
hit
horrible.
her head and everything but a little piece. And they never offer anybody counseling. They don't give it to us, and we can't afford it. That's all I want to say today, and thank you so much. But I know that prayer works. It changes all kind of situations.
Yes, it does. Well, always pray, and God will steer you to the help that you need, because God works through people. And the universe works through people. If you don't have a belief that says there is a being that's God, the energy of creation, whatever it is, will help you out. Thanks so much, Zhana. See you next month.
I'll be back again in November.
All right. And where can they go for the to hear the nonviolent blogging carnival? What's the website?
Okay, the Blogging Carnival for Nonviolence. We have a page on Facebook. So all the blogs will be posted on our Facebook page. And also you can check out Success Strategies for Black People, because a lot of them will be published there as well. And I made reference to a couple of blogs to do with domestic violence. I will be posting them again on those pages. And thank you very much, Naima. Thank you very much to my guests.
All right.
Enjoy October.
Enjoy October.
Of radio hosts, I'd like to thank all of you who participated in today's discussion. And to our global family listening from all around the world, we say thank you. To our family in China, Sheshe, India, Zanyaba, Japan, Arigato, Korea, Kamsamnida, Russia, Spasiba, Germany, Danke, Poland, Jean, France, Merci, Spain, Gracias, Italy, Grazie, Egypt, Shukran, Ghana, Medasi, Nigeria, Eshe, South Africa, Gabonga, Senegal, Jerez, Kenya, Asante, Israel, Toda, Pakistan, Shukriya, Afghanistan, Tashakur, Saudi Arabia, Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you. And may peace be upon you and the mercy of God and God's blessings.